August 16, 1942. World War II is raging across the globe. In the silent morning sky above San Francisco Bay, an American Navy blimp drifts slowly inland, pilotless, door open, engines humming, and not a single soul on board. The two-man crew has vanished without a trace. There is no parachute missing, no distress call, no evidence of a struggle, no logical explanation. What happened inside the gondola of L8 that morning remains one of the strangest aviation mysteries in American history. This is the Ghost Blimp incident. The year is 1942, and the United States is gripped by paranoia. Only 8 months have passed since the attack on Pearl Harbor. California's long stretch of coastline feels vulnerable, exposed, and unprotected. Japanese submarines have already attacked tankers off Santa Barbara and the Farallon Islands. The public is terrified of one thing above all: enemy vessels lurking just offshore. To protect the Pacific coast, the U.S. Navy deploys airships, non-rigid blimps known as L-class patrol ships. Their job, simple but critical: spot enemy submarines, escort merchant ships, sweep the waters with sonar, report anything suspicious. These slow, floating giants become an everyday sight above San Francisco. Among them is lighter-than-air ship L8. It is assigned to Squadron ZP-32, operating out of Treasure Island. The men who fly these blimps endure long, monotonous missions, but the work is respected. They carry depth charges, machine guns, and radios. They are the first line of defense against any submarine trying to approach the Golden Gate. At the height of the war, crews operate with strict discipline. Every operation is logged, every movement tracked, every minute accounted for. That is why what happened next was so shocking. Because on August 16, 1942, one of these blimps simply lost its crew. The two-man crew assigned to L8 that morning were respected, experienced aviators. Lieutenant Ernest Dewitt Cody, age 27, Naval Academy graduate, skilled airship pilot, calm, analytical, by the book, known for being meticulous in the cockpit. Ensign Charles Ellis Adams, age 38, veteran balloon pilot, over 2,200 flight hours, highly experienced with lighter-than-air craft, familiar with every emergency procedure. These were not rookies, they were not careless, and they were not men likely to panic or make sudden irrational decisions. In fact, if any crew could handle a mid-air emergency, it would be Cody and Adams. At 6:03 a.m., the men boarded L8 at Treasure Island Flight Line. Everything appeared normal. Gas cells fully inflated, ballast correct, weather calm, engines functioning, fuel tank full, all equipment accounted for. The entire pre-flight checklist was signed off without a single discrepancy. At 6:13 a.m., L8 lifted from the ground and ascended smoothly into the morning sky. Their mission, a 4-hour anti-submarine patrol around the Farallon Islands. No one knew it would turn into one of the most enduring mysteries in naval aviation. At 7:38 a.m., L8 radioed in the first and only message of the day. Position 8 miles east of the Farallons, investigating an oil slick. An oil slick in wartime is an alarm it could indicate a damaged Japanese submarine, a sunk or leaking vessel, a decoy designed to lure patrols in. Cody and Adams descended to observe the slick more closely. Witnesses aboard vessels in the area later reported seeing the blimp circle at a low altitude, approximately 30 feet above the water, a normal tactic for submarine detection. One fishing vessel crewman recalled, "We looked up and saw the blimp maybe 2-3 stories above us, circling slow. Everything looked routine. Nothing seemed abnormal." But after this moment, L8 simply drifted away. It made no further radio contact. No distress signal, no SOS, no sign of trouble. Somewhere between the Farallon Islands and the California coast, something went catastrophically wrong. Around 11:00 a.m., residents of Dali City reported an odd sight, a blimp floating unusually low over the rooftops. One man stated, "At first I thought the crew fell asleep. It moved like nobody was flying it." The blimp skimmed the hilltops, scraped a roof, and finally descended into the streets. It crashed softly onto a parked car, barely damaging it, while a growing crowd of residents ran toward the gondola. They expected to see a wounded crew, or at least someone calling for help. Instead, they found nothing. The cabin was empty, the door hung open, the control panel was functional, the radio worked, the engines had fuel. It was as if the two men had stepped out midair. When the first responders arrived, the shock only deepened. Here is what they found. 1. No sign of struggle. Everything in the cabin was in place. Nothing was knocked over or disturbed. 2. Parachutes untouched. 2 parachutes were strapped in their racks, unused. No attempt had been made to call for help, despite Navy protocol requiring constant communication in any emergency. Despite later damage from its crash landing, the airship was mechanically sound during flight. Within hours, military investigators rushed to the scene. The press would soon give the aircraft a name. The strangest question is this: how does a two-man crew exit a blimp in midair without being seen by any of the ships below? Between the Farallones and the coastline, at least 5 vessels visually observed L8's flight path. Fishing boats, merchant ships, a patrol vessel, civilian boats. None of them reported a man falling, parachutes opening, signals for help, distress flares, objects dropped. Nothing. And remember, the blimp never reached high altitude. It stayed low, extremely low, for the entire mission. If someone fell out, the splash would have been visible. If both men exited, at least one person would have been seen. Yet nobody saw anything. Everything points to one critical moment: the crew's encounter with the oil slick at 7:38 a.m. This is the last confirmed point at which both men were alive. Every expert agrees something happened there. Something that forced both men to leave the cabin, something outside the blimp, something unexpected. In truth, the Navy had no idea what happened, and they couldn't admit that in the middle of a war. The official statements released later were vague, inconsistent, and often contradictory. Despite an extensive search lasting weeks, no bodies were ever recovered, no life vests found, no clothing or equipment washed ashore. No trace of Cody or Adams ever appeared. The Pacific Ocean is large, yes, but the area searched was small, heavily patrolled, and filled with naval traffic. The disappearance was impossible to explain. Even decades later, one investigator wrote, "It was not the sea that swallowed them, it was the sky." The US Navy launched one of the most thorough investigations ever conducted for a lighter-than-air craft. The pressure was enormous. In 1942, just months after Pearl Harbor, anything unexplained was considered a potential threat. Within hours of L8's crash landing in Dali City, the Navy cordoned off the area, removed civilians, and began interviewing every witness who had seen the drifting blimp. This was not a routine accident investigation. There was urgency, almost desperation, in how the Navy handled the case. Something about the disappearance of Cody and Adams did not fit any known category. Investigators expected to find a technical failure, a radio malfunction, or a mechanical event that forced the crew to abandon ship. Instead, they found a ship in perfect condition, and a crew that had vanished from inside a sealed gondola. The more they examined the blimp, the stranger the situation became. One of the first questions Navy officials attempted to answer was the simplest: how did the crew leave the gondola? The cabin door of L8 was not like a door on an airplane you simply push open. It required deliberate action. There was no scenario in which the door could open accidentally. Yet when the blimp was found, the door was wide open. The latch was fully disengaged. The locking arm was retracted. No damage indicated forced entry or sudden pressure change. It was opened by a human hand, but 2 experienced men opening the door and both stepping outside, unprecedented. Investigators began to suspect that whatever happened on L8 happened near that open door. Witness accounts were both consistent and baffling. Several fishing boats, including the Daisy Gray, provided key observations. One witness, a fisherman named Vincent Pacheco, later described, "We could see movement inside the cabin. 2 men. They were looking downward like they were observing something. Everything appeared normal." Investigators concluded that the crew disappeared between 7:50 a.m. and 8:15 a.m., long before the blimp reached Dali City. The Ghost Blimp case is one of the only aviation disappearances where an onboard emergency is ruled out but the crew still vanished. Something external acted on them. While speculation grew, families suffered. Cody's wife wrote, "He was a careful man, he would not abandon his post, he would not jump, something happened that he did not choose." Adam's brother stated, "Charlie knew those blimps inside and out, he could fly one blindfolded. There is no normal explanation for why he isn't here." The Navy tried to support the families, but their inability to provide answers only deepened the wounds. L8 became a symbol of grief, confusion, and official silence. After the investigation, the Navy repaired the blimp and returned it to service. And here is one of the strangest details of all. L8 continued to fly for decades. In fact, it was later sold to Goodyear and became one of their advertising blimps. Every time it flew over baseball stadiums or city parades, almost nobody knew it had once been part of one of the greatest mysteries in aviation history. Passengers riding inside the gondola had no idea they were sitting in the same cockpit from which two men vanished. The Ghost Blimp flew for more than 30 years. Silent, functional, completely normal. As if nothing had ever happened. This bizarre fact only deepens the mystery. If the blimp had been structurally unsafe, it would not have flown for decades afterward. Whatever happened, it wasn't mechanical. As of today, more than 80 years later, the Ghost Blimp incident remains officially unsolved. Nothing like it has happened again. No other blimp has ever lost its crew mid-flight without explanation. The L8 case forces us to admit something. Either the crew witnessed something we cannot explain, or they experienced something we cannot imagine. Whatever the truth is, it drifted away with the morning fog over San Francisco Bay on August 16, 1942. Thank you for watching, and if you want more stories just like this, subscribe, hit the bell, and join me on the next journey. Until then, keep your eyes open. Some mysteries never sleep.